like to welcome Nat Ferrier. Nat Ferrier lives on the other coast from me. I live on the west coast of Australia, and Nat lives on the east coast of Australia. And people who don't live in this part of the world fail to realise just how big a place it is. And we're about 4 hours flight away from each other. So this is a great opportunity to talk to somebody from another culture,
Literally.
Yes, the east coast. And Nat has a wonderful background with working as a mentor and coordinator of alternative practitioners, very large group of people in her audience, and she's also a shaman and a really interesting person that I've met only recently, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of interesting stuff from you, Nat, so welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be chatting with you today.
Cool. And I wonder if you could just actually introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your journey, and allow yourself to be as, just express what you want to, you would like to express in the context of what we're seeing going on. So it's how Nat actually interacts with the environment, if you like.
Sure. Okay, so like many people on the wellness path, I had a bit of a wellness, and there was life circumstances and crises that put me onto this path in the first place. So my life was very challenging when I was younger. There was a lot of deaths, there was a lot of abuse, there was a lot of things that went on that were very cumulative up until I was about 20, 21. And by that point I was exhausted from it all, and I'd also been in a state of survive for a long time trying to deal with all that, and had really disconnected from myself in the process of that, just to cope and keep doing and getting going. However, that was the point at which I got to a point where I could no longer hold it all in anymore, and I could no longer hold in the stress and the grief and everything I needed to actually feel and process. So I blew apart when I was 20, 21, after some more life events happened. And that really forced a consideration of, because I'd reached a point at that point where I was a bit like, relative to the current situation, it's helping us realize what's important in life. At that point, I'd kind of been in this mindset of going, well, if it keeps going this hard, I can't do it anymore. I love everyone in my world, but I just can't handle it anymore because this is just too much. Who can handle this much pain and this much suffering and crisis all the time? I can't live like this anymore. Universe, I've had enough. God, I've had enough. So I kind of was thinking like that, and then I had this breakthrough moment where I call it a divine clarity moment, where this voice just came through and was very compassionate in saying, we totally hear you and feel you and understand, because that's not easy what you've been through. But what if we were to tell you that today is the day that it all starts to turn around and everything starts to get better and change from today? Would you want to stick around just one more day if you knew that that was going to be the case? And I sat there because that really broke the mindset that I'd been in, and I was a bit like, yes. I was like an emphatic yes. If like things could be good again, because I was such a passionate, heart-centered being. And I was like, if things can be good and I can feel love and feel joy again, then of course I would want to be here. Why wouldn't I? So that facilitated then this immediate shift in the journey of, okay, what can I do? What's within my power to change now going forward, rather than feeling externally dictated upon by circumstance. That got me back in my locus of control back on the inside, and then I was like, okay, what actions can I take? And then I started planning out, okay, so I can shift in rental houses. I'm living alone. I can go live with people and I can be more social, and, all these little action steps that I'm like, okay, I can do all these little things. And that facilitated then a shift in how I was living. I was doing a science degree at the time after I'd sort of done performing arts, and was very much intent upon going on that path until I had a lot of stuff break down myself. I had an injury. I had a major injury at that point that meant that I needed to take some time off to heal as well. So then I kind of switched track a bit. And at the end of my science degree, had another shift moment, because the spiritual aspect of life started trying to get in. There was friends who came who were engaging with shamanic practitioners, doing Reiki, and had that whole alternative mindset in terms of starting to introduce me to spiritual ways of thinking more so, because I'd always been very intuitive, but I'd sort of, not found a way to integrate that in life. So they introduced me to this whole notion of, thinking about what my higher purpose was within that. And I started to realize at the end of my degree, if I was wanting to go do a PhD in marine ecology and work with large marine mammals didn't actually need me to go work with them, and they didn't actually need me to go do anything. People more needed me to work with them. So at the end of my science degree, which ended up being 50% human biological science anyway, I then made this decision to go towards counselling based on a intuitive reading I had with someone who brought me back to the arty side and the healing side of me and said, just maybe sit with that one and consider what you really most enjoy in that one. And after I did, that kind of put me on the, I should be doing some form of counselling, healing work. I wanted to do art therapy, but the forms of it that I read about at that time made no sense to me when I read about transpersonal art therapy and things like that. So I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do a diploma of professional counselling at that time. So I started pursuing that. And that's how I ended up on the counselling and community services path initially, and was working in the health administration side of things in the lead up to that. So I got sort of up to a management level on the health side of things, and also allied health practices and later holistic wellness practices came up in the management side of that before I came back into the building my own practice side of it. Got my grounding in community services, got sick of dealing with the systematic red tape and the limitation within that, and was like, I want the freedom of private practice. Let me have the freedom of private practice. So I decided I was going to build my own. Ended up practice managing a beautiful birth-focused holistic wellness practice while working on my counselling practice, and I continued to work on the energetic wellness side of my skill set at that time. So I'd been doing Reiki, I'd been learning everything I can about energetic wellness, transpersonal psychology. So I did some of that through I went back and did transpersonal art therapy at that point. I was learning about every modality I could that had anything to do with tantric energy work, any energetic understanding that came from any of the spiritual realms. I was curious about it and was learning about all of them. And so I ended up with a focus on working mainly with women, some men as well, but my focus ended up being initially on passion and purpose, which deepened into women's health and relationships, because as people came and talked about what was in the way of their, why they were feeling stuck and why they were feeling disconnected or depressed, it all became about their own self-joy, and then it became about relationships as well, was a big thing. And then the thing underlying a lot of the blocks in their relationships was trauma and illness and how that was playing out. So that became the whole focus of my private practice at that point, at the same time as I was developing myself from a management perspective in clinics. Being practice manager, I was constantly, along with the clinic owners I was working with at the time, we were constantly mentoring other practitioners. So then there was people who came into my realm who were business coaches who offered me the possibility to be able to learn specific methodologies that I could use to help other wellness practitioners get momentum in building their businesses, helping them connect with more clients, clarify what their message was, and understand what their magic is that they do with clients a little bit more, so that in having clarity around what their journey is that they can take people on, they can then connect with the right audience to make sure that they can deliver their magic to them. So that's how I ended up on that path, and worked with some organisations for years where we took that to an international level, and we worked across countries in helping practitioners to build their businesses in that respect, and also transition into the online space as well. And within that, I found that a lot of what people were seeking me out for, because I had a performing arts background, because the majority of people, when they rate me on LinkedIn, they put public speaking as one of my top skills, and they've always sought me out saying, I love you on video. I love how you are. I really enjoy your videos. You're how do I do that? How do I be like that on video? So a lot of the thing that then sought me out for beyond my private practice was help with getting clarity around their voice and becoming confident in putting themselves out there. So so that's kind of what I've evolved into. And a big part of that is, again, I mean, the underlying theme within all of it is them connecting. It's them connecting more deeply with themselves, lighting up with the most soulful version of their own truth, their own voice, and then being able to express themselves in the world from that place, which seems to be very relevant in the world right now, because we're in this circumstance where we're having a lot of the external things that we used to rely on for purpose, for happiness, for entertainment, for anything like that. As we're all at home right now, we're disconnected from a lot of the things we used to be able to go do, right? And I'm feeling like it's now more important than ever that we need to be able to find that internal source of happiness, of self-love, of self-connection for a start, so as we can find our own happiness without needing to fill up with something else from the external world, regardless of whatever's going on in terms of, the virus and health and all of that. Coming back to connecting to ourselves first and foremost, and then connecting with the world is so important right now. Such an important thing. So, yeah, that's the long short version of how I got here.
Fair enough. So tell me a little bit more about what you're actually observing out there at the moment. So like what you're observing.
Sure. So key themes at the moment, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of fear because things like viruses. I actually, in my science degree, one of the majors that I did was in microbiology and virology. And one of the things that I noticed within studying that realm of viral illness, and a lot of the women I worked with in private practice too, I worked with around ongoing viral illnesses that they had. And one of the things that I noticed within that really quickly is that there seems like it's not random and accidental the way that their viral illnesses present themselves. Like there seems to be a much more complex element to what's going on there, both within themselves. There's a psychosomatic aspect, and there seems to be on a bigger scale in terms of illness and what's playing out. There's a bigger theme. There's something else going on there, right? As there was for them. So part of the thing I'm seeing is a lot of fear and confusion. There's a lot of fear of a virus. Viral illnesses seem to be one of the things that we fear the most, because we seem to have the least understanding and the least control over it. So viruses over anything else seem to cause panic, whereas anything we know we can get on top of with antibiotics, even though bacteria are getting more resilient. It's like we've got that internal sense of, I can beat this in this war against microorganisms. I can get on top of that. But viruses, there's a lot more fear around them. So I'm feeling like there's a lot of fear related to that, and misunderstanding of what the purposes are, or how things like viruses function, or how our microbial organisms within us function. There's a lot of misunderstanding around that, because not everything that is in us, we've got a whole, as you would know, this is your area of expertise. Everything within us has a purpose and is you're working as part of a community. It's not that every organism is trying to attack you and is a threat to you, but it can be that if you perceive them as a threat, and viruses I've certainly seen, we see there's evidence in nature that this is the case. If the host's threatened, like the virus becomes hostile almost, so to speak. So there's little things like that I'm like, well, if we could just understand that and how to come back into a symbiotic relationship with the microbial world, the natural world, because we've become disconnected from that would potentially really help alleviate a lot of the fear and the distress right now. That's not to say don't follow every single bit of medical advice on how to avoid transmission. and how to avoid participating in that process of a virus getting on you or some bag of yours or something, or being breathed by you into an environment with someone else. That can still happen, that things can still potentially transfer. So I'm not saying throw out any of that. That's all still needed right now, but I just feel like there's a grander perspective that needs to be understood, that microbes aren't our enemy in this war that we're fighting right now against this virus. Doesn't have to be war. So that's one thing.
Can I just grab you there just as you're going?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
One of the things that you're just touching on I find completely intriguing, and I'm really interested in the shamanic view of this, and that is the notion of a virus and why we're seeing a virus as being such a different thing to, say, a bacteria or a fungal infection, or a parasite for that matter. You know, many of which can be, you know, very, very difficult for a human's body to actually manage.
Yes.
But like you and I, and, you know, some people watching this know that a virus is just a piece of information. What is it about, you know, but without all of the other structure that makes them, you know, like a being, if you like. What is it about, like, for the average person? Because you're quite right, the average person is seeing a virus as being far more threatening. What is it about it, like a shamanic view of that? Like,
shamanic view of that, yeah. So my understanding from I would say in the West, the better term sometimes, if you haven't had, the term I often use is neo-shamanic for a lot of the people in the Western world who call themselves shamanic, because they may or may not have, in the same way as someone who grew up in Peru or in an indigenous community or a Maori community may have a slightly different relationship with the ancestral heritage of, you know, how they came to be a shaman, right? So I really want to honour that process in how I talk about me being shamanic and a practitioner in that respect. I have a European background, and within that European background, my heritage might be a little bit more druid than anything else as to, you know, what that might be for me personally. So I call myself sort of neo-shamanic, but traditionally the shamanic understanding of anything, whether it be an illness, whether it's a bacterially caused illness or it's a mental health illness, shamans would traditionally regard everyone as being a teacher to us that's trying to show us something, and it has a message to share in that respect. So for some of the practitioners that I've worked with, they've overcome cancer. At times there would have been various aspects within that led to that. Every time that they've had an illness like that, their approach to working with it was to have a conversation with what they would call the spirit of the cancer or whatever. It's almost like there's a consciousness behind that they then have a conversation with to get to the bottom of, so what is it that you're trying to show me right now? Like, why am I having to have this experience? I don't necessarily I wouldn't have consciously intended to want to die. So what is it that you're trying to show me right now? Like, to ask cancer. And it's the same with every particular bacteria or virus that I've ever encountered, because I have HSV as one of my viruses that I have ongoingly, and I had a huge journey with it when I first got it. Didn't get it voluntarily or consciously, you know, in a way that I'd made a choice within that. So then I had to make sense of, well, why? What is the purpose of all of this? And again, a big part of my healing within that was having a conversation around, what is this virus teaching me right now? What is it showing me that I wasn't doing it before, that I wasn't getting before I had it, that I needed to manifest this illness in order to help me get it? And, you know, so there was a message for me in that around self-love, about how I was utilizing my sexuality and how I was not trusting and showing up as the value of me, of who I am in dating and relating. Like, I was like having this viewpoint of, I need to show men that, you know, I can be really great in bed and I'm really sexual and I can thrill them in that respect. And if I can do that, then they'll fall in love with me at some point after that, as opposed to showing up as me going, this is who I am. What do you need? What are your goals in life? What do you want? What do you want to share with someone? This is who I am. This is what I want. These are my long-term goals. This is what I love to do. This is what I want to share with someone. Are we on the same page? Like, I had it backwards. I was coming from the wrong point, right? So I didn't learn this until this virus showed up, prevented this temporary block to some men being able to safely, if I was conscious around it and did everything you're supposed to do in terms of telling them about it, it temporarily became a block that some people might not want to engage with me unless they had it too, right? So then I had to relate on a whole other level rather than just jumping into bed unconditionally on the whim of an urge to do so. Like I had to go, okay, so now I'm going to come from a point of actually trying to get to know someone as a friend before we progress to that. And that completely changed my relationship dynamics. I got into one of the longest lasting, best relationships I'd been in after that, which ended for a whole entirely different reason to to dealing with this at the start. But like it completely changed the dynamics because all of a sudden I would perceive I was coming from the right place for a change rather than, there's nothing wrong with being sexual in a relationship. It's just that my motivation for doing it was a bit backwards in how I was doing it at the time. I wasn't doing it for fun and enjoyment. I was doing it to manipulate and for a purpose. And thank God for this illness showing up as the final teacher in helping me to do things a different way. I also noticed that I was manifesting it every time I felt unsafe with a man or a man had an agenda that was slightly different to what I wanted. I'd get an attack every single time without fail because it was then communicating with me on my behalf to tell me, hey, I know this is what your agenda is. This is what you want to create. This is the experience you want to have. This person's not in alignment with it. And you're not listening to the unconscious signals that he's giving you that are telling you that that's the case. Therefore, I'm yelling at you right now in the form of giving you an attack, which is a physical message from your body, which is telling you, don't go there because he's not what you want. He's not what you need. So like you're talking about with viruses being a messenger or a form of communication, I absolutely agree because that was my experience of then learning to work with this thing to be like, okay, what are you trying to tell me right now? What am I missing? So it helped me build a better relationship with my body, with my bodily, the voice of my body, my bodily intelligence, to hear the voice of that and what it was trying to tell me all the time as a form of my intuition.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So what, like there's an obvious sort of lead on here, and that is that, the everyday person out in the community who aren't thinking along the lines that you're thinking about.
Yes.
Subconsciously or unconsciously, they're going to be aware that there is this kind of wake up available from a virus, and perhaps that's what they fear. They fear that I might actually have to wake up in some way. So leads us nicely on to the next question, which is advice that you have around this global situation. So like what advice would you have for people
right now? So I think one of the biggest concerns is that because we're all at home alone right now, either alone or we're in the scenario where we're now with family or partners, and where whatever we were doing previously out in the world, which might have provided previously opportunity when things went wrong at home or something came up for us that we were triggered by something they did or said, where it was easy to go, okay, I'm busy, I'm on the way to work right now, I don't want to go there with you right now, I'm just going to avoid that. And then avoiding it one day becomes avoiding it for 6 months. All of a sudden, now that we're in each other's close proximity all the time, it's a little harder to avoid that stuff all the time. So there's a lot of things that are becoming amplified that were pre-existing problems already. It's just that we've just kind of gone, la, 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 don't want to know, don't want to know, don't want to know. I don't want to hear it. I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to go shopping right now. I'm going to go get my nails done. I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to go create 15 hours worth of videos and content and amazing stuff and life purpose, which is brilliant and amazing. But what is it that we're avoiding in the process of doing that? So a brilliant thing to do right now is to not avoid whatever's coming up, but to go towards it. But with a viewpoint to understanding that anything that comes up right now isn't doesn't need to be feared because it's a permanent problem, right? Like if depression, for example, is something that comes up right now, or say anger, certain things or certain experiences or people around us make us angry. It's not to be feared because, again, every single emotion and every experience it's a learning opportunity. And the shamanic viewpoint of emotional experience, again, is that no emotional condition is meant to be permanent, right? We're constantly actually meant to be in a state of flow and evolution. And if we were to be present with the emotional processes that are going on within us and what energy is there, and taking an observatory position in looking at what's going on in that respect, as well as actually where we need to going, okay, so something's coming up here that needs a resolution. It's coming up because it needs a resolution. And that resolution may be deeper than just what's going on in the present moment. So it may be that your partner's saying something right now is triggering you, but when's the first time that really came up for us, right? Is that something that our parents said to us initially, that we learned something about ourselves when we were 3, which we now have a tendency to play out with everyone in our life because we have come to understand that that's what's going to happen when I say things in that certain way. Or if I get angry, I'm not going to be lovable, as another example, because it's not acceptable to be angry. You can't be angry, therefore I'm not allowed to be angry, therefore I go into this guilt and shame thing and try and suppress it and shut it down when I get angry because you're not allowed to be angry. Angry is bad. As examples, all of these things need resolution though, because it would be, if we were to go into the emotion for one and feel it, right? In feeling it and feeling why we have it, and then asking, what is it that I really need in this scenario right now? What's it showing me that I really need that's going on? There's a process that needs to happen and needs to be completed, right? So this presents a beautiful opportunity right now to do that process in getting to the bottom of what is it that I really need, separate to my partner or whatever's going on with them. What's going on for me right now, and what do I need to heal that or resolve that, so as I can keep moving after I, be with that experience. Whether you go into having to, massively feel the anger, if you've never done it, you may have to do it once or twice to actually get okay with that, before you then maybe take on a more observatory role with it to go, yeah, I feel what that's coming up right now, but I don't necessarily need to go into the level 10 of it because I get it. I see what's coming up, so don't need to go into the depth. But yeah, allowing that process, because that process would then naturally, if we allow it to happen, happens quite quickly to resolution. It's only when we hit the pause button of going, I'm not allowed to feel it, I'm not allowed to express that, or I'm not allowed to do what I want right now, that we get in a state of stuckness, state of depression, state of numbness, state of everything being disconnected. And then when we're in a state of disconnection, it's hard for that process to complete itself, because we've literally shut down our mental process of it, but also shut down our energy within ourselves to actually being able to resolve it. Whereas if we switch it on, allow the process, it's like you drop into the process. It's like driving down a hill. You drive down to the bottom of the hill. Through doing the process, you pick up momentum, and then you will eventually accelerate a little and come out the other side, right?
Yep.
That's how any given process is meant to be. It's not meant to be that you lose yourself down in the depths of, okay, I go into the sadness or I go into the anger and I never come out, and it's going to be a permanent state and I'll get lost in it. It's not meant to be that way. So there's a beautiful opportunity to learn how to process emotions effectively right now, and how to heal our experiences. And the only way for us to learn to do that is to be still and everything else to be taken away. So as you have to learn to be with that process. Does that mean you have to learn to do it by yourself? No. I would say there's plenty of practitioners, myself being one of them, yourself being another one, that can help us learn, how do I navigate that process without feeling like I'm going to lose myself in the crazy emotional depths at the bottom that many of us also fear, that we fear it's never going to end. How do you do it in a way that you can drive into that and then drive out the other side, and then effectively come back to you will come back into happiness. You will come back into positive emotions. You will come back into balance on the other side of it once you complete the process, right? So there's a big lesson in learning how to be with ourselves right now in a much more, it's about emotional maturity. It's about learning to do emotional process, emotional intelligence in a healthy way.
Okay, so like that's one huge swathe of guidance that you've got there. What other things are you sort of advising? And, you know, like I'm harking back to a conversation we had earlier about,
Yes.
you know, the wars between the practitioners. So what's your thought about this, you know?
Yes.
Well, between people are holding ideas.
Yes. At a much simpler level right now, that's kind of a base level underneath that. When we're interacting with the world right now, right, and something triggers us, whether that be that you saw a post on social media, you saw a friend post something on social media, whether a friend called you and talked about posts on social media that said, hey, there's this conspiracy stuff going on around 5G and viruses right now. I think it sounds credible. What do you think? And then you get into this conversation, which leads you to a place of, hang on, we have different viewpoints around that. And then you escalate into this point of tension because it's like, no, I think it should be this way. I think it should be this way. Or whether it's that you're in your own space and you're feeling into, well, you're just hearing your own thoughts while you're in your own company, or you're meditating and you're asking for guidance and you're hearing things that then tell you, hey, you need to be worried about that person. There's part of, I was literally just writing a post about this to say, it's a good time to learn to just be still before you immediately react to what is being shared. And the big question is, what's really going on here? And if I am hearing this voice right now, like, what's its agenda? What's its intention, really? Is it trying to help me? Is it trying to help me be the best version of me? Is this trying to help humanity step into a better place and become the best versions of us? It'll be teaching us something either way, in line with me talking about, you know, the illnesses and the voices, and everything's a teacher. Again, even a voice, whether it's human or whether it's a spiritual voice, whatever it is, like there's still an element of discernment and intention that we need to hold around engaging with that and listening to that.
Yeah.
And if I was to say that anything is beneficial right now in helping us connect and come closer, then it's to be, you know, asking if that's in alignment with love, with its intention. Or is it that it's inadvertently disconnecting us? Because if there were dark forces in the world, then, and they wanted to truly harm us, wouldn't it be in their benefit to have us turn on each other right now? And then end up polarizing against each other and blocking and unfriending everyone all over the place? Wouldn't that kind of be a win on their part? Because they've just got exactly what they want, because they just disconnected us, not only from each other, but from ourselves, from our hearts, from compassion, from feeling each other and being compassionate to each other right now, because we've just then gone into our wounds, into hurt, into anger, into judgment, into whatever that it brought up. And then we're playing out this process with them, projecting it onto them, projecting something onto them, and then it's got us in a state of disconnection from each other.
Yeah.
But not coming into the place of compassion and connection with each other. Make sense?
Can we connect with one another and be at odds with one another? Yes,
at the same time. And if not, why not? Like, what is it that we feel like we can't control? Or what's coming up that we feel like we need to change their truth or their state? What's really going on there? Why do we need to change them in order for us to feel comfortable?
Well, you've come all the way around, you know, back to the same place, which is the virus, the information from the virus is about fear, about what you're going to do with fear, like how you're going to actually, you know, work with it. I find it fascinating.
Engage with it. Yeah. For sure.
I remember many years ago doing a talk, and I talked about the tyranny of knowing, and it's one of the worst things that you can do is to actually know stuff. And
Particularly if you think that you know it better than anyone. Like, I'm really an expert in this now. The more you go down that path, the further you're gone, because the less open you are to hearing new viewpoints, and the less humility there starts to be in it, right? The more fixed. I think the bigger problem in that, the more fixed your viewpoint becomes, and the less open you become to hearing new viewpoints. Yeah. That's the risk.
It's a tremendous risk as well. And I've interviewed some absolutely magnificent people for this Congress, but the people with very strong views, so like are holding a very strong position. They often will, inside themselves, they're justifying it by saying, well, I perceive these things, I can see it, I can tell what's going on with all these things. And I remember in one of these interviews, I actually mentioned this concept that you lok at somebody like the President of the United States, Donald Trump, incredibly intuitive, like magnificently intuitive, and he's perceiving the same things that this interviewee is perceiving. Same information, like they're both getting the same information coming in. It's identical information, but very intuitive people, so therefore they have access to exactly the same information. As soon as that information comes in, it starts going through filters. And the filters go out in this direction, the filters go out in that direction, depending on which person it is. And the truth that comes out of it is actually any kind of substantiation of these filters. And I'm really fascinated with what you're talking about, and that drives separation, which is so exactly what you're talking about.
Sure. Yeah.
I like talking to you. You agree with me.
Well, there's two reasons for that. I mean, number one, I'm trying to maintain that open viewpoint thing. Yes, we believe a few things in common, but there's definitely something in that notion as well with, like, I very much identify with your viewpoint that, that information comes in. It doesn't just come into one part of us, whether it's our mind. You speak about a model where we have multiple brains within us beyond just this brain, right? And I absolutely believe in that as well. And I believe that information needs to integrate through all of them for us to be able to hear a message and deliver a message in a balanced, heart-centered, highest version of ourselves kind of way. But the risk is, like, and I see Trump as being a bit of an example of this, at the same time as he's incredibly intuitive. I learned tarot as well. So, like, tarot cards are often a form of communicating meaning and symbology for me. There's this card in the tarot, there's a suit called the Swords, and they're all about the mental realm of understanding. And there's this card that I've had a big journey with. It's called the Queen of Swords, right? There's also a King of Swords, and that's all about mastery of your mind and communicating insight, but with heart and groundedness and compassion for other people, right? Because you can ask to be a channel for information, and you can, like, that information, if you don't dictate boundaries and conditions around how that information is delivered, you can just sit there and channel for days on end until you literally fall down because you're not listening to, I need to sleep right now and I need to eat. That information would just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming until you say, hold on, I need a breather, I need a break, I need to eat, I need to sleep, I need to shower, right? That insight will keep coming. It's accessible 24/7. It won't stop unless you say so. So that's one aspect of the challenge of having information come through, right? Staying grounded and listening, like I was saying earlier, listening to all of what our body's saying, hearing all those messages while that information's coming in. Where are the other messages in your body that are saying, I'm tired right now, and still being present to that? The aspect that we need to be concerned about when we're communicating with others as well is, again, other people can go, oh, I'm curious about this subject, and they can sit there and go, oh, I want to listen to more, 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 and they can sit there and they can keep absorbing and listening for 10 hours straight, and then they blow apart at the end of it, because a lot of that information starts to reconfigure stuff in their mind. It will start to reconfigure their functioning within the other brains in the body and within their wider body. It's smashing paradigms within them. And every time a paradigm shifts within you, that has flow on for your physical body. It has flow on for your energy body. And so the human body is a machine in that it's like in the third dimensional reality sense, it can only do processes so fast. Your kidneys can only remove that so fast, whereas we can download intuition at the speed we can download it. But you can only integrate it so fast and catch up and then implement it in the external world so fast. So when it comes to communicating it to other people, one of the things that we need to learn is to be really sensitive to and in connection with them to see how what we're saying and communicating to them is landing. Because if they're really actually about to blow apart, or it's just too much for them to handle in one go, like what I've delivered today is a lot of information to some people, that would be enough to blow them for 6 months, right?
Yeah.
So it's about being sensitive to maintaining connection to ourselves, to our hearts, to be compassionate when we're delivering the message, as well as sensitive to their process and going, how are you really going with this right now? Do you need me to stop? Have you had enough? And then being clever in how we communicate messages, not just from, I'm delivering the message, but what's the best way that I can deliver this message to you that it's of the most benefit to you.
Okay. So your first message was a message of actually taking this opportunity to find yourself. So actually and be with yourself. Your second message is actually not to separate. And your third message is to really manage the extent to which you're trying to prosecute out your own agenda, so your own filters and so on, and the potency and what it means, like the consequences that come on from things. And this is often comes up with my my clinical work, is that people think I'm talking about there being blame or something like that. Not the case at all. I'm just talking about consequences. Take action. Things happen.
Pretty much. Self-responsibility is key in the end. And it is. Like, I even did it with someone the other day that she pulled me up on it. I was telling you about this yesterday, where she's like, see, you're assuming that I'm about to do something right now that is actually not, I would say, within my realm of truth of what I'm about to do right now. That's not how I'm seeing you. I'm not judging you right now. I'm not wanting to have a fight with you. But I was like going, oh God, she's going to like start talking to all this 5G stuff. And we're about to have the biggest fight from hell because I don't believe some of the stuff that she's saying right now. And I'm just like, some part of me is like alarm bells that conflict is about to happen. But she's like, that's not where I was going with you. And I'm like, interesting. Where's the line between where I'm projecting onto that and where's the line in the intuition and where I'm legitimately picking up that, there's a legitimate message there, that there is something brewing and there's a reaction in her. How do you tell the difference?
Okay.
That's a part of learning intuitive intelligence, is to discern the difference.
That's a journey rather than destination,
Yes, for sure.
Something that we all get right. Okay, well, look, that's really interesting stuff there. If you were to be given a mount to go and stand on, what would your message be to humanity at the moment?
It is such a powerful time right now to come into deeper connection with ourselves, to come into deeper connection with each other. And what if that's the point right now? What if it is that the way of life that we were living, the way of life that we were doing things, we were given opportunities, we were giving warning signs that things were starting to get unsustainable. But what if it's that we then kind of were like, yeah, but I don't know, I'm going to keep doing, and we kind of went back to sleep a little bit. What if this is the opportunity now that we don't go back to sleep? What if we now stay connected, we lean in rather than pull out, and we see how we can better love each other and better be expressions of love in the world?
Okay, so that's tremendous advice as well. So the waking up, actually, from the way you're looking at it, Nat, is that it's about reaching out. So like it's staying connected and being responsible for the experience that leads on from it. So understanding the consequences that come from being connected. Yeah. So that's in a nutshell. Can I summarize? Is that in a nutshell the waking up process. That's what waking up means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously being in more connection inside yourself, which you talked a lot about there as well. So I don't want to paraphrase you.
No, but it's ultimately, I mean, this is the beautiful golden opportunity. Live in deeper connection with the planet, live in deeper connection with the animal world, live in deeper connection with the microbial world. We're all part of this same huge ecosystem, and we've kind of been living an agenda that's separate to the rest. The planet will be here before and after humans are. It has many times been here through and beyond many incarnations and civilizations rising and falling. The planet will do whatever to recover. It just will. But there's a big thing for us as humanity right now in how do we live in greater balance as a part of the whole in a more symbiotic fashion than we have been. Because where we were going was when we were talking about microbial relationships as to how species can interact with each other earlier, you can either be symbiotic and be mutually beneficial. You can have no effect on each other whatsoever. You can be parasitic in that one of you is taking from the other at the other's expense, or at the end of the line is that you be a parasitoid in that what you take from the host or the other species actually kills them. It's so severe. How humans were being has been parasitic with this planet. And for other animals, that we're killing so many things without meaning to. Our way of life has been like that. How do we be symbiotic? How do we be more connected to be able to be that symbiotic part of the whole?
Okay, so be connected and also be symbiotic. So that's the third part of your message there. Lovely. All right, well, Nat Ferrier, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you. Hopefully nobody's completely exploding by the end of this, because, there's a lot. There was a lot in there. We've been on a journey.
Exploding's a bad thing, yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.